Hey, it's 8:52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center.
The plane has hit the World Trade Center.
It seemed to be like a small plane. I just heard a couple noises. It looked like it bounced off the building, and then I just saw a huge ball of fire on top.
Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion. My God, it's right in the middle of the building.
If there's any kind of an effort up there yet. Now remember, oh my God.
Oh my God.
America's present need is not heroic, but healing. Not nostrums, but normalcy. Not revolution, but restoration. Not agitation, but adjustment. Not surgery, but serenity. Not the dramatic, but the dispassionate. Not experiment, but equipoise. Not submergence in internationality, but sustainment in triumphant nationality. My best judgment of America's needs is to steady down, to get squarely on our feet, to make sure of the right path.
In the wake of 9/11, everyone was devastated, but those who were the most impressionable would have the hardest time coping. America's youth could not be shielded from the terror that pierced their innocence at an early age, especially while their adult mentors were consumed with grief and confusion. The nation felt compelled to do something to distract the public and foster familial values that could help people cope during such harrowing times. Suspending their reality through fantasy film would create an illusion of abnormality at a time ridden with mass chaos and confusion, thus the rise of fantasy during the decade following 9/11. This genre fosters a cross-generational interest both children and adults could enjoy together. Fantasy movies became therapeutic inadvertently, displaying subtle representations of violence in order to cope and foster a state of normalcy. According to Paul S. Lazarsfeld and Robert K. Merton, the mass media confers status on public issues, persons, organizations, and social movements. In other words, the media, particularly the film industry, sought to understand through entertaining, telling content.
Relations with the indigenous are only getting worse.
Yeah, that tends to happen when you use machine guns on them.
Various cinematic trends in post-9/11 films incorporate visual congruencies between the attacks and fantasy film features. A millennial fixation with falling, flight, and defying gravity arose. Take Harry Potter, for example. Scenes from Iron Man resonated with audiences for their striking visual congruencies. These images of flight parallel those of planes on 9/11. Post 9/11, Richard Drew's photograph of the falling man was the subject of conversation amongst the media.
It's a very quiet photograph. It's not like a lot of other violent photographs from other disasters. There's no blood, there's no guts, there's nobody getting shot. But people react to it in a way that they feel that they can relate to this photograph.
Scenes from Iron Man resonated with audiences for their striking visual congruencies. Harry Potter calls on many images of falling as well. Wounded bodies as well as wounded protagonists show the deterioration of the good guy in the face of evil. In light of 9/11 devastation, Americans were paralyzed by fears for security and safety in the future. Similarly, protagonists in post-9/11 films are often hurt, plagued by injuries and diseases. A comforting and reassuring thread in all these films? Resilience. Despite their obstacles and close encounters with death, the protagonists do not let shortcomings define them. Instead, they carry on in the face of adversity, oftentimes attaining their goals and thriving as if nothing ever happened.
Jake! My Jake!
Another characteristic of the supple protagonist, morality. A relevant connection to the film's interrogation of U.S. morality and the equivocal tactics of the Bush administration in Iraq. These films featured tortured heroes wrestling with issues of power and responsibility, just as Americans grappled to seek justice in a moral and humane fashion following the attacks. Iron Man Stark had a moral epiphany that reveals discontent not only with his actions, but further commentary on American militia decisions post 9/11.
I saw young Americans killed by the very weapons I created to defend them and protect them. And I saw that I had become part of a system that is comfortable with zero accountability.
There is a persistent questioning of authority throughout Iron Man as an Avatar. The domination of the Na'vi tribe in Avatar parallels the destruction of villages and innocent civilians in the Middle East. Visual parallels with the War on Terror implicitly critique U.S. involvement in Iraq.
This was our school. Now it's just storage. The kids were so bright, eager to learn. Picked up English faster than I could teach.
What happened here?
You gonna help us with this gear? We've got a lot to do.
Overall, a distinctive iconography associated with post 9/11 fantasy had emerged, also featuring falling debris, burning edifices, billowing smoke, and shattering glass. These three movies clearly address anxieties arising from 9/11 and the War on Terror, as well as seek a solution to the ongoing unrest ensuing American civilians in the wake of violence. Yet, the desire to understand events and foster normalcy through fiction is not a revolutionary concept, as the American media had adopted this method years ago during the Great Depression, with Superman, who offered escapism and reassurance to audiences in vulnerable times. It is apparent that his powers have changed through the times, catering to the needs of the American people. According to Irving Goffman, it can be assumed that a necessary condition for social life is the sharing of a single set of normative expectations by all participants. When a rule is broken, restorative measures will occur. The damaging is terminated and the damage repaired, whether by control agencies or the culprit himself. The early Superman was faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Yet in his 1978 movie adaptation, Superman is charged up with an entirely new set of abilities.
What the hell is that? Easy, miss.
In fact, this revival was motivated by the desire for normalcy and cultural coherency during the war in Vietnam. Other popular superheroes came to life, such as Batman and Captain America, amidst emotional upheavals of World War II. Author and journalist Angela Cebulski proliferates in her article, Flashes of Light in a Dark World, Why We Need Superheroes, that Americans need superheroes because they teach us to live with perpetual weakness. For younger audiences, magic has obvious attractions, while for older viewers, fantasy spiritualism and consistent conjuring of an afterlife afford reassurance and solace in times of threat. Through fantasy, people can understand current events on simpler terms that are often more eye-opening through the factors of entertainment. This attempt to foster normalcy in the media through subtle similarities in fantasy and reality was short-lived, as many trends tend to be. Today, films with the same schemes explore more graphic interpretations of the tragedy. The media created a safe space during a time when insecurity laced the air. Tragedy is inevitable, but it is imperative to find light in times of crippling darkness. More recent tragedies will bring about new cinematic trends and iconic characters as coping mechanisms. We just have to wait and see.